Hello, my name is Tom Wilson, and this screencast is on Svelte and Google OAuth. So, authentication is a pain. Um, and in this screencast, we're going to show you how to do authentication with Google's API. A lot of people log into Google and actually have a client that has G Suite and building an app so that they can log into Google. And what I wanted to do is kind of go through that and show a demo on how you can kind of set that up with Svelte. So this screencast will walk through that sort of just a simple example. We'll build a Express web server. We'll show you how to verify your API through the server. Okay. We'll show you how to verify your API through the server, and then we'll show you how you can create a Svelte store to secure your Jamstack app using Google authentication. So hopefully it'll be pretty neat, and let's get started. The first thing we want to do is create a project folder. So we're going to make directory Google OAuth demo. And then in this directory, we're going to create an API server and an app server. So we'll go ahead and create our API directory, and we'll install, and actually let's use Byte to see how that works. Um, I think that'll be fun. Um, let's do yarn create at byte.js/app, and we'll just call it app, and we'll pick Svelte. Cool. So Vite or Byte, however you're supposed to pronounce it, is a new kind of build framework bundler kind of thing. It uses some very fast build times in development by just taking advantage of just standard ESM modules. And then it uses, I think, Rollup to um, build the bundle to ship to production. So anyway, it's supposed to be super fast, so we'll see. Um, okay, so now we've got our API and our app folder. Um, at this point, you'll want to, if you don't have a Google account set up, you'll want to do that. You'll want to go to, let me pull up a browser. You'll want to go to Google Auth credentials, right? And I think you can pull up this documentation using Auth 2 to access Google APIs. And Maybe that's it. It doesn't look like it. Google OAuth credentials. Oh, great. I have the link somewhere, I think. Yeah. I've got the link. It's developers.google.com, identity, sign in, web sign in is the site. And then follow these instructions. But the biggest thing is you want to go and create your credentials um, for and just follow all the steps in the create credentials process, which will give you a client ID. And then you'll use that client ID to build your web application. So I'll show you how that works. But um, there are quite a few steps to jump through here, but it's all free. There's no charges for that. And if you've already got a Google account, you're halfway there. So that's that. And so once you do that, you're going to get a client ID, and you just want to keep track of that. And we'll put it in our environment settings. So let's go ahead and set up an Express server. So we'll go into the API folder, and we're just going to do yarn init, and we're going to do yarn add, and we're going to use Express and Google OAuth Library. So this Google OAuth library will be what we use to verify the logged in user on our API and give them access to our API. We want to add some other stuff just to make life a little bit easier. And then we're going to add .env as a development tool so we can load our environments from a .env file. And we'll create a server.js file and create a verify.js file. And the verify will be our middleware. We can go ahead and create that first. But basically, middleware is just a function that sits on the Express server in the middle of when your request is made to when you handle the request, your request handler. And that middleware can check the request, do some stuff, and determine if to pass it to your handler or to respond and terminate kind of the request chain at that point in time. So this middleware, this verified middleware, is going to verify the request and make sure it's authorized in order to continue down to the request handler. So before I do that, I'm going to set the type of the app to be module. So our server will be type module, which allows us to use ESM. So let's do that. And now we can just import everything. So we'll import Google OAuth library, and we'll import Lambda because we're going to use that as some helper functions. And we're going to import Crocs as well, because we'll use that too. Okay, and we're going to use the identity monad from Crocs, and we're going to use path or split and int from Ramda. And then let's go ahead and create our little helper function down here. So we're going to create this function called extract token. And this function is going to take a request and it's going to essentially pull the bearer token that's included in the request from the header. So it's just going to extract the token out so that we can use it to validate. And when you submit a request, you put headers on that request. One of the headers will be an authorization header, and that header will have a string as its value, and it will be bearer, and then a space, and then the actual token value. So basically what we're going to do is use the identity monad to create a pipeline to basically safely extract that bearer token. So we're going to use path R to basically set if the header's authorization path on the request doesn't exist, then it's going to just return bearer invalid. And that will allow for everything to extract appropriately and error out as well, like it should. So we're going to split that string, which will give us an array of a left and a right. And we will just want to get the last item in that array. So it should be 2. And then we're going to extract it out. So that's our simple extract token pipeline. And now we're going to export a function, and it'll be a default function. And we're going to take in this client ID. This is the client ID that you got from Google in the credentials page. And then we're going to take a middleware function, which is a request, a response, and a next function. And we're going to create our client using Google OAuth 2 client ID. Right? And now we're going to verify the token. So we'll return the result. So we'll say client.verify ID token. We'll give it ID token. And this is where we call our extract token from the request. And then we'll give it an audience of client ID. Okay. And this is a promise. So we're going to create a little pipeline. And what it's going to give us is a ticket. And that ticket will allow us to get the payload. So the payload would be like the user, the name, an ID, email, etc. So we're going to essentially assign that to request.user, and we'll say ticket.get payload. And at this point, if this is successful, then we know that this was a successful it was a successful verification. So we can just call next right here. And then we can catch, and if it was an error, then we'll call next and pass the error like that. And that's our middleware. It's pretty straightforward. We use the Google API and call verify ID token. And then once we verified it, we get the payload to get the user information, and we pass it by calling the next function. Um, and go ahead and create a .env file. So .env, and then you want to put client ID, and then set this equal to your client ID. Okay. Um, and then the next thing we want to do is go ahead and build our server, and it's just going to be a very simple server. So we're going to open up server.js, and we're going to import Express from Express and import verify from verify and import cores from cores. So we'll create our Express app, and we're going to use cores, and then we're going to use our new middleware called verify, and we'll pass in the client ID, and then we're just going to create a get API function, and we're just going to do console log user quest.user. This will just show us what our user is that's logged in, and then we're just going to return that back to the caller. Yeah, just to keep it simple. Okay. We'll just create another endpoint here so we can test and make sure that everything is working. And the last thing, we'll mix it up a little bit and just validate the API endpoint. Okay. And let's create a script. And with this script, we're going to run node-r.env config, and that'll load up the environment, and then we'll run server.js. Okay. It's like I might have an extra parentheses. And let's see what else we got. Not find module verified JS. Let's see. It's there. Maybe. I don't think I need that. Verify. I think I have to include the .js on the end for local files. I think that's what it is. Cool. So let's curl localhost 4000, and we've got our server running, which is cool. Okay, now let's work on our Svelte app. Okay, let's just see if we can run yarn dev and just get it up and running. Okay, open new tab. Let's see what we've got here. So it looks like we might have a problem. It's first time using 2.0, beat 2.0. May have to switch. Let's see what our index HTML says. Source main JS. Import app. That looks good. All right. Not quite sure what's going on, but that's okay. We can fall back to something that works. All right. So if first you don't succeed, try something different. We'll just use the good old roll-up version of Svelte. And I'll just cd in app and install. And we'll do yarn dev. And let's refresh. And it's on 5,000. 35,000. Cool. Much better. Okay. Go ahead and just get rid of all the default stuff. And we'll just do hello world for right now. Cool. Okay, so we want to include the GAPI. It's Google's API module. And we'll do that by adding a script tag. It's apis.google.com/js/platform.js. And this will give us all the functions to essentially manage the login process on the client side. It will essentially do the OAuth 2 um, uh, workflow, the authorization client workflow for Google, uh, for a Google account. So that's cool. And we should notice once this is installed that we have a GAPI object. So let's make sure that we do. Um, may have to restart the server. Just make sure. It's not defined. Yeah, so I've got some sort of bug there. Let's see. Script source, yeah. So I'm using double quotes. I should be using single quotes. That should do it. Okay. And now we should have GAPI, and we do. There's platform, etc., etc. So that's cool. And we want that to load in the header and actually load and be available before our application initializes. It's kind of important. In some of the documentation, you'll see like adding props like async and defer. But what that does is that allows our app to load before that Google API, and that doesn't do us any good for authentication purposes. Um, so when we're building authentication, and again, we're kind of keeping this simple. We just want a user to log in that has a Gmail account, and then we want to be able to grab the token and send it to our API and verify it. So we're going to use a Svelte Store to do that, and we'll just call the file auth.js, and we'll import a writable store because we want to be able to write to it. And we're going to set up a variable here called auth2, which we'll use shortly. And a Svelte store has a subscribe function, a set function, and an update function. And we're going to start the store off as null, which means there's no user. But when the user logs in, the store would be set with the user's profile and their token. So we're going to export this store as a user. And again, we'll have our subscribe function, our sign in, and log out functions. So what we're trying to do is keep all the kind of authentication functions in this one store. So we're going to provide a sign-in function and a logout function. And if the store is not null, then we know the user is logged in. So we'll be able to just say, if user, and if it's not null, then we know throughout our app that the user is logged in. Okay. So when this store kind of initializes, what we want to do is check and say if GAPI2 or GAPI, that doesn't exist. We just want to throw an error. Google API not found. Right? So we just want to throw that right out of the bat, and that'll really let us know if our app is somehow loading before the GAPI module is loading. And then we need to initialize the auth2 part of the Google API. So we're going to say gapi.load auth2. And we're going to assign that to our variable up there, gapi.auth2.init. And we need to provide our client ID. Now, I'm going to leave that blank for now. And actually, what we want to do is use Rollup's replace plugin to inject that in. And scope. Okay. So we also want to set up a listener that will update our store whenever the user kind of logs in or logs out. So we're going to use auth2.is signed in, and all of this is documented in their reference on Google. But this listener, this function will fire every time a sign in occurs or a sign out occurs. And it'll just return a argument that we're calling logged in, and that's going to be either true or false. If it's true, then we can get the user. So we've got a user. So we're going to say get the current user like that. And then we're going to get the profile of the user by calling get basic profile. And then we're going to update our store. And we're going to set a object in the store. We're going to have profile, and it's going to have the user's ID and name. Right, and image. and email. Okay. And then the most important part is the token, and we can get the auth response and ID token. And this token is what we'll use to send to our API to get verified. So that's the logged in, but if it returns false, then it's logged out, and that's where we want to update the value of our store to null. Let's see, let's make sure. Okay, I think I need one more parentheses there. And then one more there. Okay. So that's our auth module. It's going to return a user and the sign in and sign out function. Um, well, we got two more steps to do. Got to define these sign in and sign out functions. And that's pretty straightforward. So we'll just do const sign in, and it's just a function, and we're just going to call auth2.sign_in like that, and const log out, and that's just auth2.sign_out. Yeah. Easy peasy. Okay. So now we have our auth module, and what we're going to do is actually we're going to install a router, and then we're going to kind of create a protected route and create a login button and a logout button. So the first thing we need to do is install a router. I use 10-row, which is awesome. It's an awesome little client-side router. Restart server just in case. And let's go into our app.svelte file. And we're going to import a route from 10-row. And we'll wait on the user for right now. Let's just show you how this router works really quick. So let's just say Google OAuth demo. And let's create a route for the root. And we'll say home page. And a route for, let's call it protected. We'll say protected page. Okay. And you can see our home page showing. Let's just create a little nav flow up here. Okay. So we've got our home page and then protected, and we've got a little routing system. Pretty neat. Okay, so now let's work on a user auth. So we've got our auth module. So we'll import that, and we're going to import it as a Svelte Store as user. Like that. Okay. And we can protect our route. So let's see what we want to do here. Let's create a login and logout button in our nav here. So we're going to say if user, right? We want to log out. So we'll add a button. And on the click, we're going to call user.logout like that. And we'll say log out. And if there's no user, then we're going to show our button. We'll click user.sign in. That. And we'll end our if here. Okay. So hopefully it just shows the sign in button, and it does. Cool. Now we've got to set our client ID in order for that button to work. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll use a plugin called Rollup Plugin Replace. Let's go to the README. And we probably want to use .env so we can just throw our client ID in a .env file. So we'll add this bring this up. -d. I think it already does that, but anyway, I'm gonna go get my credentials. Okay. And I'll paste those really quick. Okay. So I got my client credentials set. And now we'll go into the Rollup Config, and basically we want to pull and replace and then we're going to do process.env. Yeah. So we're going to replace, let's go through this plugin process. Um, so we'll put this, oops, right here, replace, and we're going to use our percent underscore client ID underscore percent as our key. And then we're going to replace it with process.env.client ID, like that. So we replace that, and then what that should do is in the auth.js file, it should replace that client ID. We'll know pretty quickly if it's working or not. And then since this is running on port 5000, I need to make sure in my credentials that I'm supporting localhost 5000, and I am. So let's bring back up our server. And let's see. It said something about replace. I didn't see what it said. I missed it again. Let's try build. Okay, defaults, prevent assignment. Prevents replacing strings where they're followed by a single equal sign. Make sure I'm okay. I think that's okay. We'll see. So let's fire this up and see if it works. Okay. Looks like it got an error, not a valid origin for your client. Objects client ID, localhost 5000. It's in there. Okay. Um, Okay, so let's see what's going on. Wonder if that replace is not working. Let's see. Yeah, something's wrong with the replace. Okay. So if this is working, if I hit sign in, get my Google sign in popping up, and I can click, and hopefully we're logging out. Sign in. Cool. I wish we could say that we were done, but we're not. There's a couple of things that we have to do to validate that we can set stuff to the send stuff to the server, the Express server, and validate there. So I'm going to try to do this pretty quickly, um, but basically what we want to do is we want to um, go to a protected route, and in that protected route, we want to call the API server, get some data, and display it. So we're going to import protected from protected.svelte, which is a new component we'll create. And down here, we'll just use that component for the route. So, and then it's going to yell because this file doesn't exist. We're going to import user. And basically we can say if user, then let's show some user info. So let's show username. And let's show user email. And then finally, let's show our user token. And that reminds me that it's user profile name and user profile email. Cool. Um, so let's start with that. Let's restart our server. There we go. Protected is not defined. Okay. Import. Let's see if that's a little better. Cool. Okay. So we're logged in. So if we go to protected, we should have our username, email, and our token, which is pretty cool. What did I do? Oh, we need to set our server to be single page. So we'll go in the rollup, and when we start our server, we just want to pass single like that. Okay. Now let's go into our protected, and what we want to do is make a call. We'll do a fetch, and we're going to use await to do that. So we'll create a function up here. We'll call it get profile from our API, and we're just going to call fetch, and it's localhost 4000 / API is the URL, and we want to include in our headers station our token. Okay. And then we just want to convert it to JSON like that. And we want to get our token from our user like that. Okay. Let's clean this up a little bit. Okay. So we know we've got our user, and we'll just come down here, create another line break, and we'll use await, and we'll call get profile and pass in the user dot token, and then we'll just do then profile. We'll end await, and let's just do a JSON stringify on the profile and see what it looks like that. Okay. All right. So we're on the home page. If we go to protected, now the server doesn't exist, so we need to fire the server up. So we'll go to our API and do yarn dev. And I want to see, let me check and make sure that I set the environment um, client ID up for that. Um, Almost done. Let me set the client credentials up for the server. Okay. Now let's run our server. Go to home. Reload just in case. Okay. Signed in. Got it protected. Cool. And we got our stuff back from the server. We got like name, and let's do email. We got email verified true. So that's super cool, and you can see it kind of printed out here. And let's print that out. Name, profile.name. Let's just start with that. Cool. Awesome. So there you have it. That's is about as quick of a demo of using something like Google OAuth for Svelte as I can. You can create a, kind of a shell page, or create on each page this check for if user, and if that exists, you're logged in, and at any point you can log out. Then that user will be set to null. Um, and yeah, if you go to protected, nothing will show there. You can obviously show that you're not logged in. Go to the login page, etc. Click sign in, get access uh, to the user's Google account so they can sign in, and then you can hit your API. So that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.